All right, let's get this meeting started. Today is Monday, February 10. It is 5 o'clock. We are in the City Hall Council Chambers, second floor. This is the Planning Commission meeting. So let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
All right, before we continue the meeting, there's a slight adjustment in the agenda. And Kimberly brought this up, and there's a very important document, I think that Kurt has. Do you have a very?
Yeah.
There's an announcement, very important announcement that we have to make. Very important announcement. It is Clinton's birthday. Clinton, happy birthday.
There's nothing I'd rather do to celebrate my birthday than to spend it with the planning commission. I just want you all to know that it is one of the best birthdays of my life. I'm sure of that, sure of that. Thank you very much.
Well,
Very
we're
much.
honored as well.
All right. All right, well, first thing on the agenda, now that I got my one and only wish list as a chair, is to jump on to the elections for 2025. So, do you want to start with chair?
Can I just ask a question about proceeding with that right now?
Sure.
Because of the way this whole thing came down, our terms run from July, is it July 1 to July 1? It's fiscal year terms, and some of our members are going to be up for reelection mid-2025. If there's a change, which we don't know if there would be or not be. And unless there's some reason we have to change right now, I would propose that we wait and see what the board looks like July 1, and at that point, do an election.
I mean, you were set, I think your first meeting was last February, so usually it's done the first of the year, but I suppose if that's what you want to do, that makes some sense. I don't know that it matters to me.
We have, normally there are bylaws that specify.
Yeah, I'd have to check them and I don't have them handy right now, so.
Should we just have, I mean, we could have an election and then have another election in,
Yeah, that's what would happen in July.
Okay.
If someone that was elected, you would just have to have another election to replace that person.
I say we move forward, my opinion.
That's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move into nomination Mike Tomey. I think it's good to just mix it up, maybe every once in a while, maybe every year, and at least Mike has been chairman before, and he's got considerable experience at these things, and I think he may have an interest, and so I'd like to move.
I'll second that nomination.
All right,
I'll second it.
all in favor? Aye. All yours, Mike?
I'll make a nomination for vice chairman. Likewise, I agree it's a good thing to change it up, and I'd like to nominate Bill Bardenwerper as vice chair.
I'll second the motion. Oh, okay. All right, I'm not going to second it. I'll leave that for somebody else. Yeah, I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your right hand.
Aye.
Aye.
That passes. So now we go to secretary. I will take nominations for secretary.
Well, I think Kim has done a fantastic job above and beyond the call of duty. I don't know whether she wants to continue to serve, but assuming that she might, I'd like to nominate Kim.
I would just like to say that I think she has been a better secretary than I've seen in my 7 years on this board. And so if she would accept it, I think that would be quite valuable for this board.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing no opposition, all in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. And that motion carries also. The next thing we have is going to be a nomination to the Waterfront Park Committee. And I believe that Bill Sauter has expressed interest in doing that in the past, but I'll be open to nominations.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Bill Suter. I think that particularly with his construction management background, sounds to me like they could use somebody with that particular expertise.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion, please signify by raising your right hand.
Aye.
Yes,
I can vote for
absolutely. You can vote for yourself. Any opposition? Seeing none, that carries. Bill?
Yep.
Good luck.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to the review of the commission meeting minutes. We'll start with the December 3rd work session minutes. Any motions on that?
Motion to approve the December 3rd work session minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.
Aye.
It's unanimous. We'll move on to the December 16th regular meeting minutes. Ready for a motion on that.
I move that we accept the minutes as they're presented.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further conversation? All in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I forgot to ask, are we online? Okay, so next item on the agenda is questions regarding military operations. Do we have any questions or concerns about military operations? I'd just like to state for the record, I think the military operations are an important part of this community. And when there are impacts to the community based on military operations, I think it's imperative that the public gets to know what's going on. And so I encourage anybody representing the military to come to these monthly meetings and let us know if there's anything happening that ought to be of interest to the community. Having that done, we will move on to new business and rezoning. Staff would like to present. Pardon? Yeah.
Hmm?
Maybe I'm not loud enough. So, does staff want to do a presentation for rezoning? And this is the rezoning of Christian Park and Pigeon Point.
So, dear Planning Commission members, dear citizens, I'm going to pull up this little presentation on Christensen Park and Pigeon Point Boat Landing. Just one moment, please. So, it's also in your packet, so there's the notice sign, so it has been noticed for this public hearing today. Next up is a zoning map showing the location of it. Just- So since item A, 1026 Rivo Road has been deferred to our next, or your next regular meeting in March, staff of City of Beaufort would like to request an amendment to the zoning map for Christensen Park, together with the area around Pigeon Point Boat Landing and the open space that you see on this zoning map here. The area, or rather Christensen Point, which is located right in the center of it, of the neighborhood there. The location is terminus of Pigeon Point Road, Wilson Street, bordered also by the south by Albert Street. Is currently zoned T3S, which is a, let's put it that way, a suburban neighborhood-based transit zone. So it's not the densest, it's not the least dense. It kind of reflects the zoning of the surrounding neighborhood, which in character is predominantly single-family dwellings. At the last Planning Commission meeting in November 2024, staff was approached by the residents, the neighborhood of Pigeon Point around Christensen Park, with the concern that they were afraid that eventually, maybe someday, due to the current zoning district, it might become victim of development, being zone T3S. T3S allows, especially for single-family residential, as well as, for instance, churches, indoor entertainment as a conditional use, bed and breakfasts, also parks, though. So it is, as I said before, it's a neighborhood zoning district in kind of a suburban character, okay? In the future land use plan of the comprehensive plan that we have, the general Pigeon Point neighborhood has been identified as a general urban district. We have a chart depicting our transit zones within those categories. So within our scale of what we call transit zones, we kind of go from a very low density to a very high density intensity of uses. So within that general spectrum of general urban neighborhood, the T1 zoning district that is requested by staff today is represented in that neighborhood and would also be compatible with within the future land use map of the comprehensive zone, or the plan rather. The T1 district is also consistent, of course, what is already on the ground there. It is consistent with parks, boat landings. It protects open space, nature, view sheds, and the like. So it is definitely a zoning district that goes along not only with the uses on the ground as is, but also with what staff and planning commission would like to eventually see in the future as enjoyment for current and future residents, okay? The T1 district would ensure that no development would occur on the site in the future, and it would remain a park or open space for the public to enjoy in the future as well. So with that, I just have some more pictures. If anybody online might not be aware of it, Pigeon Point is this point. It's named Pigeon Point because it kind of goes up to that point where the boat landing is. After staff was approached in November, the city has actually undertaken a title search on the land, and we found out that the area, not only Christensen Park itself, but also the the boat landing and the open spaces that surround the boat landing are both part or have been part of the same parcel. So back in the 1940s, when Christensen Park has been conveyed as a park to the city, the areas around Pigeon Point Boat Landing and that open space is basically part of that same parcel of land. So that's why today we're not only bringing Christensen Park itself, but also both of them to you. So that request to rezone would also entail not only Christensen Park, which is that triangle between Albert, Wilson Drive, and so forth, but also the area towards the boat landing itself. The city is actually currently doing a survey on site. That's why I guess some residents might see some orange flags staked in the ground. So we're kind of updating and doing a new survey, a plat survey, basically. So that's what the city's basically doing at the moment. With that, staff recommends approval of this zoning request to change the zoning map from T3S to T1. Pardon me?
Thank you. I had one quick question. I noticed that there is some reference to the city and the county having some conversations about further development in that area. Do you know anything about that?
Personally, I don't. Maybe Kurt Fries has something? No?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any questions from the board to staff? Yes.
I've got a question or two. First of all, I want to thank the residents who live in the neighborhood there for attending, and I understand why you want to downzone the park, much like Cuthbert Park. You know, I spoke against that. I was the only one previously as a matter of philosophy, and that I didn't believe the city should downzone the property at this particular time. And I feel even more strongly, not about the landing area itself, but the park itself. And so I just want to ask, is there someone from the neighborhood that could answer a question? What-
But I'm going to get into the public participation here right after this. I just wanted to know if anybody wanted to have any or had any questions of staff at this point.
I understand. Okay, I'll reserve my questions in after public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
I
it.
do have a question, just about one of the pictures, in the presentation. The one that has the stars on it. There's like 4 big
Yeah.
yellow stars. What are those stars supposed to be?
Okay, those stars actually depict the pictures that I've included from the street view point of angle, basically. So
Okay,
if you see the stars, that's basically like this picture here is the corner of Wilson Drive and Albert. So it's kind of that southwest star. I just took pictures for you to kind of see the different sides, I guess, the angles of the parks, what it kind of looks like. So, yeah.
yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
Any other questions?
To make one comment, I would just like to thank staff for giving us this quality of pictures and graphics where they outline the site clearly. We haven't always had them like this, and this really helps to understand it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I would second that. Thank you very much. No other further questions. I'm going to open it up to public comment. Anybody that would like to come forward and speak, please do so. Please limit your discussion to about 2 minutes and try not to cover the same material that others have already covered. Absolutely, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Paul Somerville. I'm a resident of Beaufort and also a resident of Pigeon Point, lifelong. Some of what I'm going to say is family lore. You may need a title abstractor to confirm what I'm going to say, but my understanding is my mother was a Christensen, and my understanding is when this was gifted or donated to the city by Catherine Wales Christensen, I think she signed off on it. There was a reverter clause in it that if it was ever used for anything other than a park, it would go back to the family. And I'm here to say we don't want it. So, I can't imagine that there'd be any reason why you'd want to put anything commercial on there. So I don't see any reason why it can't go back from T3 to T1. It makes sense to me. I'm not sitting where you are, but, anyway, I strongly support the change. Thank you.
Mr. Somerville, I don't think I heard your actual address. You said you were a resident of,
I'm sorry?
what is your actual street address?
I don't understand the question.
What is your street address?
Oh, I'm sorry, 1509, right across the street from the Pigeon Point Park.
1509
Pigeon Point Road. Yeah,
Pigeon Point Road.
sorry.
Okay, is there a sign-up sheet there?
I'm sorry?
Is there a sign-up sheet in front of you on the podium?
Yes. Oh, okay, sure, no problem. Okay, sure.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else that would like to come up, please give your name and address. I apologize, I forgot that. Thank you, Kim, for the record. And sign our sign-in sheet too.
Okay.
Chairman and members, I'm Kay Merrill. I'm chairman of the Pigeon Point neighborhood. I live at 813 Augusta, and I'll write that down here in a minute. You know, Beaufort has a long history of celebrating its founders and its important people and even its visitors. We've got all this stuff coming up with the Marquis de Lafayette pretty soon. All he did was come to Beaufort for a little while. And he might be happy to know that there's a Lafayette Street in Pigeon Point. We hope he'd be happy to know that. But what Mr. Somerville did not say was that the Christensen family, of which he is a member, has a long history in Beaufort. Niels Christensen came from Denmark, and among other things, he was and I want to make sure I'm right about this, designer, architect, and superintendent of the Beaufort National Cemetery from 1870 to 1876. According to Larry Rowland's History of Beaufort County, Volume 2, Colonel Christensen and his wife Abby Holmes Christensen, an innovator in early childhood education, here's the big quote, produced Beaufort's most influential family of the next generation. So the park is named for a really consequential family, and it has become a consequential part of our neighborhood. The most recent event we had was an Arbor Day event in which we planted a native American holly tree, which we paid for, by the way, in conjunction with Public Works. Prior to that, we had a 102nd birthday party for our beloved neighbor, May LeBianca. These are the kinds of things that go on as people stroll through the park and enjoy it. We're asking you please not to destroy that lovely tree canopy, that lovely ambiance that has become so important to Pigeon Point. And I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Trask, I really do. But I'm asking you to consider that really, if you've been there, and I think you have, you know what it looks like. People come past that in order to get to the boat landing. The boat landing is popular, and this is not just for Pigeon Point neighbors, by the way. A lot of people use this little park, and particularly the boat landing. So we're just asking you to protect that lovely part of our neighborhood. We're just asking you, please. And I'm going to sign this and turn it over to, I bet you would like to have something to say. There we go.
Thank you, Kay.
I'll do this.
Next person.
I hadn't expected to speak this evening, but if you've got about an hour and 45 minutes, I'd be delighted to do so for you.
I think I said 2 minutes, but you know, you could stretch that maybe to 3. But please give me your, name and address.
My name is Graham Carr. I live at 2403 Pigeon Point Road, where I have lived for almost 50 years. And it is an absolutely beautiful part of the town. It is unique, and I wouldn't, the Christensen Park is a specifically part of it. And we wouldn't, I've talked to a lot of the neighbors, including Kay, and thanked her for representing us so well. And I would just say that on the basis of what I've heard so far, it seems to me that I think you all have got it absolutely right. In other words, don't do anything that is going to alter it drastically, and leave it the way it is, an available place for local residents to take their boats and enter the water, but and retrieve their boats from the water, but you don't want to expand any parking into the residential areas of the around the Christensen Park. Thank you so much. And I didn't mean to speak, and I'm done pretty well. I'm inside the two.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And if you'll sign, yeah, just put your X on it then. Anybody else that would like to, make a statement? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and turn it over to the board for any discussion. Paul, did you get a chance to ask your question?
Yep, thank you. I would like to ask a question or two. So I understand completely your concern and your desire to basically have the park downzoned in perpetuity. I fully understand that. And I'd be the last person on earth to ever suggest that any sort of structure other than a park gazebo or something appropriate would ever be built there. But the gentleman, Graham, that just spoke, and I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your last name, I apologize, but raised the very issue that I'm concerned about. We've got a landing that the city is preparing to refurbish after a number of years of damage and neglect. And my question is, do people sometimes park along the edge of the park as they have launched their boat and park a trailer? And is that something that's objectionable to the neighborhood?
Graham, yeah, I'll let you complete your 45-minute. Please come up to the mic so we can hear you.
To briefly address that question, we live literally on the park. I live at 2403 Pigeon Point Road, which looks out on Christensen Park. In my experience there since 1974, we have for about 2 weeks in the middle of the summer, we probably have 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 incidents where people do come up and they park on the grass on Pigeon Point Park as it exists. And that's fine. But basically, it would change the nature of that entire neighborhood if you actually put marked parking there, or you put gravel down on the ground. And I would beg you humbly, but earnestly, not to contemplate doing that. It would change the whole aspect of that area. Questions?
Thank you, Graham. I appreciate it. Now, again, close the public comment section. Any discussion from the board?
Just, I guess there was no online comment.
No, ma'am.
So there's designated parking up by the boat launch. And it looks like from these pictures, there is no designated parking in that lower portion. Is that correct? And is that what Mr. Carr was talking about when he said sometimes people park on the grass in that lower portion?
I believe so. Yeah.
Lower portion, the parking is at the boat landing itself.
Right. And then there's another section,
That park section, which we call Christensen Park,
yeah,
is where occasionally people will park. We have worked with the city to put some planting in there. Try to avoid a lot of parking.
and this question is for Christopher. I was a little confused when your initial presentation, are we only talking about that triangular section, the park today? We're not talking about changing any zoning regarding the boat launch. Is that, or am I not understanding that?
Well, the Christensen Park and the boat landing are tied to each other. So the boat landing and the open space around the boat landing is actually tied into Christensen Park.
Are they all the
They're
same?
part of the same parcel.
Okay,
Yeah, so the boat landing is actually part of the parcel where Christensen Park stands.
okay, so
Is
that's
it?
all one.
It's considered one, yeah.
Okay, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it looks, it's a
Right.
little hard to tell from the photographs if it's actually connected, but apparently
Well,
it is.
yes, it is.
And I was looking at T1, Mr. Trask mentioned something about, a gazebo or something like that, coming up. As I read the definition of T1 in 2.3.2, this district typically does not contain buildings with the exception of small civic buildings, interpretive centers, or supportive recreation facilities. So it sounds to me that maybe there could be a little gazebo or, nature shack or something like that in the future if somebody wanted to do that. Is that correct?
Yeah. Specific uses, let's say a gazebo, or uses that are specific to that park designation, recreational park specific I wouldn't say development, but uses, yes, or improvements. Let's say improvements. Yeah.
And one thing that always comes up in parks and especially with water access, would restroom facilities be permitted in T1 if they ever wanted to do that?
I would say yes. Restrooms are usually, could be part of a park, right? I mean, there are a lot of parks that do have restroom facilities. So it's a park or recreational based use that, yeah,
Okay.
I would say so, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I'd just like to make one more comment if I may. So I would encourage the residents, and I understand that the residents next to the park, adjacent to the park, are those who are most concerned about preserving it as such. But I would, given the fact that the landing is going to be improved, the likelihood of increased boat traffic, that the city, I think this is premature because I'm concerned that the city has not worked out some reasonable provision for overflow parking that is, not too upsetting to the residents. After all, the park is a city property, and it's important to provide for those persons who launch their boats and where launching is not as convenient. It's important to be able to use, and I look forward personally to using that landing. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
There's a lady out there raising her hand.
I closed public comment. I'm sorry. And I can understand it would be a concern, but that would be I'll let you come up and ask the question if you would like. But I believe the city needs to control parking and access if it's designated as a park structure and a boat landing. My interpretation of that would be that the boat landing would have parking and parking for boats. Unless there's actual parking spots made for the park itself, the city would probably restrict parking just anywhere on the grass in the park, but go ahead.
I guess Robin Copperness, I live at 2423 Pigeon Point Road. So I'm actually between the Christensen Park and right where Pinckney Park is and the boat landing. The thing is, it's always been a very quiet area, and in fact, there aren't that many cars that go down there, and even the boat trailers, because it is a single lane boat landing. And I'm hoping that when the time comes to spend the millions of dollars that they're saying to fix up the boat landing, that they're not going to turn it into more than a single lane ramp, because it is deep in the heart of a residential neighborhood. It's not like the one on Ladies Island, which is right smack in a commercial district on a highway. This is where people live right on Pigeon Point Road, and there are children, there are dogs, there are people walking, there are bicyclists. The whole point of that is it maintains its very small residential neighborhood. And the boat landing has many parking spots down there. So I can't imagine that they would need to add more parking up the hill from the boat landing, because as I said, once a year, Graham mentioned it, for a couple of days, maybe Water Festival, and maybe mostly Water Festival, and even then, it's only a couple of days a year. There's plenty of boat parking down at the boat landing, and the last thing we want is a massive commercial enterprise at the end of our residential neighborhood. It's not fair to anybody in the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I can understand that too. I think that if and when there is development of that, hopefully you'll be able to participate with whoever's developing it. Right now, we have no plans, or the development of this is not before us right now. It's just whether or not to turn this into a park.
And I will just add one more thing about Christensen Park. As it is now, well, there's a little path that goes through it, and people do park. The people that visit neighbors, they park along there, and it's usually parallel parking, and it's on the street side, so they're sort of half on the street, half on there. And Kay mentioned that there's plantings. So, and nobody complains about that. It's a very easygoing area. No, they're not, strict rules and signs, don't park here, and it's always worked very well. It's never been a problem for anybody. People haven't complained, and cars can park there, and then they go away, and then there aren't any cars there most of the time. And it's just a nice neighborly thing. I don't think it's necessary to have signs and rules and all of that. But anyway, I'll leave it at that.
I appreciate it, and I would suggest that if it does get voted in as a park, that you come down and have some discussions with the city about your concerns.
Okay, thank you.
And may I? If you look at the picture image street view number, this second one and the third one, you could actually see where the people usually park down Wilson Drive. So you could see, some of those cars are kind of a little bit on the road, and then the planting to kind of prevent, cars from parking over where the park area is. Me and my wife walk this park pretty often, and I can't imagine it being anything else.
Thank you.
Just one more question. Since we're also including the boat landing and the parking in this whole rezoning, would the rezoning adversely impact the parking that exists there right now by turning that into T1? Does that get to stay there regardless of the rezoning?
The rezoning itself wouldn't change anything to the layout as it is now. it just would basically prohibit specific developments, for instance, building single-family homes on that space and so forth. So it kind of locks it into that park and recreational use is basically locked in by down zoning it. So by going T1, it'll be a open space park use without the ability to actually go in and, subdivide or put houses into it and such. So, but that's only the zoning perspective of it, of course. So as we talked before, park-related uses or improvements within a T1 zone doesn't necessarily prohibit upgrading a parking situation.
The parking
It's-
lots
it's-
are
It's basically
permitted.
just protecting the use as a park and an open space. Right.
And a parking lot is permitted in T1.
It's conducive to a recreational park use if you want to, develop a park and you want to provide parking and maybe upgrade that parking situation that goes along with a park-related recreational use. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further questions from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezoning of Christensen Park and Pigeon Point Boat Landing as T1.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I think we should probably always include on our motions on rezonings, the basis, just say based on the staff report, compliance with the comp plan and civic master plan. I would just ask that maybe you include that in
Yeah.
Specifically,
So-
the findings of fact in the staff report.
All right.
yes.
So I'd like to make the motion to rezone Christensen Park and Pigeon Point Boat Landing as T1 based on staff findings and staff report.
I'll second.
Okay. Doesn't exactly conform with the rules, but I think that'll be okay. So I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand.
Aye.
Those opposed? Go 6-1. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Appreciate your attendance. The next portion involves the section 5, and I think that in our last meeting, when we did have an arborist available to answer questions, he's not up here today. But we had indicated that we would move this to the next commission meeting. So we'll go to the code changes for section 5 next. Bert?
Yes, I think as you stated, this was presented last week at your work session. We did have the city, I guess, contractual arborist there for that session to kind of answer some extra questions on the tree portion of that. I don't know that we had planned a big discussion on this tonight. I think I had at the work session kind of indicated a need to work on this at the next work session. But obviously one of the items tabled tonight or withdrew. So we can, kind of start on it if you'd like to start going through it or answer some major questions on it in preparation for the next meeting. But what you have is a draft. I just, can can answer any questions. If you're ready to move forward with it, we can move forward. It's just really up to you. So,
I think that, my recollection of what we discussed at our last work session, was that we really didn't start other than asking general questions of the arborist and staff. And we also scheduled our next work session as an extended work session to start at 1 PM and go to 5 PM. And I think is it March 4th?
March 4th.
Yeah. So in my opinion, especially considering the state of the draft and the many changes from many sources that are included in the draft, I think it would be more productive to defer on this until we have an opportunity to work on it in our next work session and take it up at the next meeting.
Any other comments?
It, it could be efficient if there are any major issues, if that's the will. If there are any major issues right now that you'd like us to work on for March 4th, this would be a good forum to kind of voice them and we can prepare them for that meeting. I don't know if any of you had any.
I know I'm in general agreement with most of what's there. There are a few issues that I would like to have discussion on. But other than that, no, I think any of my comments could be held until our next meeting.
Yeah, I had questions on the parking, but it doesn't look like there was any changes in there, but I could wait until the work session as well for those questions.
Okay.
I have lots of little questions, so I think it's gonna require line by line.
Okay. No major questions.
We mentioned at our last meeting, having the members submit their comments to each other. So there's still an opportunity for that before March. I'm about 3/4 through this document.
I guess the question is whether we defer this or we table it, since we're in a formal meeting now.
Yeah, I think you need to table it. Yeah.
So I'm open for a motion to table.
It was noticed, so you might want to ask if anybody is here to speak on it. That's all I would say. Sure.
Well, I move that we table further discussion of Chapter 5 until the scheduled work session on March 3rd.
Is it the 3rd or the 4th?
We moved it to the 3rd.
Oh, you're right.
That's right.
Okay.
It's a Monday at 1.
Monday.
So that's the 3rd.
Okay, so I have a motion to table. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second, and I'm gonna ask for public comment, but I wanted to get this done first so that we knew where we were going, if that's okay.
Hmm.
So all in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. And that is unanimous. So I'll go ahead and open it up. If anybody would like to give any public comment at this time, please come forward and do so. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and the motion stands to table. Move on to old business. So we'll take a look at Chapter 7 and Chapter 9, starting with Chapter 7. And Kurt, do you have anything to?
Yeah,
add to
so last week you should have received a rather large packet with everything. And then subsequently on Wednesday, I believe, Christopher made all of the changes from the meeting in the afternoon and sent you the new track changes. And that was on Chapter 9.
Mhm.
And so what we're looking at, I think we're maybe finally here. It's been a long journey, right? But Chapter 7 and 9 are some really kind of the critical portions of the code that needed, I think, the most attention. That I think everyone identified is needing some major change. And so Chapter 7 is basically land development requirements, which includes platting, subdivision, roads, the typical things you think of with development and with planning and zoning and that kind of thing. And we are, essentially this was a major revision of those requirements and adding, many, many, many pages to it. And I know it's taken a lot of time, but I just wanted to set the stage for that. And kind of the major changes are really bolstering the traffic and road standards, and then creating a lot of standards for all of the things that you see. And so that, plating actions, preliminary plats, sketch plans, site plans, not only creating those requirements, but then also making them transparent by making those now public hearings that everyone will be notified for. And then providing the standards, the findings, the discretion that you need to make your decisions. So we've basically taken a process that didn't have any real clear standards in the code, added the standards, other communities, and then making them transparent for the public, for you to make decisions. So I think we're addressing a lot of the concerns that I know that a lot of citizens, staff, and the Planning Commission have had over the years since this form-based code was adopted. Chapter 9 is kind of the process part of the whole code, and I think the way it was laid out originally, it was, and I think we can all attest that have looked at the code, was not maybe the most straightforward or easy to understand. And I think the goal here was to kind of clarify that. You've added some good appeal standards. You've basically taken the Chapter 7 new standards and kind of folded them into Chapter 9. That's basically, how does one go about all of these processes? Where do permits go? Where do plats go? What's required of them? How long do they take before they expire? And you've spent a lot of time on that. And, what you're looking at here is really clarifying that whole process, shortening the amount of time that a project, right now you could go up to 8 years essentially for some projects, which is a long time for a development project to get a vesting. You're shortening that. You're providing clear notice standards and to everything. And I think just clear standards in general for the public and for developers and citizens to use. So that's kind of the big overview of everything you're doing. And I think you have the new changes before you. And the final thing I would add is, one of the major things with Chapter 9 is you're also, with Chapter 7, we talked about providing that some clear standards for you to make decisions, but with rezonings, you're adding, I think a really major change, which is you can now have the discretion to require, you want to see how a development looks like, a plan. So if I want to come here and, let's say I owned Christensen Park and I wanted to build a boat landing in a commercial way, but I didn't want to tell you that. So I wanted to rezone it to a district that would allow a marina, but I said, I don't have to tell you that. I think it puts you in a hard place to make a decision, right? It puts council in a hard place to make a decision. I think by, obtaining that information while you're, as a requirement of the rezoning, it really provides you a lot of information to make a good decision and for the public to also be aware of what development may occur. So that was another major thing that you're adding. So I think these are really kind of monumental changes, I think, to the city. They really go towards a lot of extra standards and a lot of transparency. So, again, it does make the process probably a little more difficult for a developer, but it does give them more certainty at the same time that if I meet all of these things, then I should be able to get an approval. So with that, I'll shut up.
Kurt, could you just clarify, my understanding that the work of the Planning Commission on Chapter 7 and 9 and any other sections of the codes we do address is basically a recommendation to City Council.
It is a
as to
recommendation.
Changes that need to be made. What are the next steps in the process? Does it go direct to council? Does it go to city attorney? Does it go to somebody else? What happens next?
I'm sure. So the next thing it goes to our city attorney for a review. I know we have a lot of attorneys on this, but hopefully we won't find too much, but, and then it would go to the council. So for any text amendment, and this is part of this section, it has to be acted on by the Planning Commission with a recommendation and then by the city council. So it'll have 2 hearings before city council, and hopefully that'll be within the next month or two. And the city council has kind of decided to take them in this fashion. So we'll do chapter 7 and 9, and I think hopefully in the next month or two, we'll be done with the next really major chapter, which is about protecting trees, buffer areas, parking. That seems to be a concern to a lot of the citizens. Hopefully that'll be in the next few months and it'll go to council too. So you recommend it with all the changes tonight. You have the clean copies of both before you. If you have any recommended changes, minor changes, that we can make them with the motion if there was something that was missed. Then it'll go to a city attorney for a legal review, just to make sure that, because it's, as you know, it's a pretty big packet. It's like a few hundred pages. And then it'll go to city council for 2 readings.
I'd like to take this in 2 pieces. I'd like to start with chapter 7 and then go to chapter 9 and do the comments and or approvals based on the sections individually, if that's okay, Kurt.
That's fine. Yeah, sure.
So I guess I want to go to chapter or section 7 first. Are there any further comments for chapter 7 from the board?
I don't have any changes on that as I do on the last couple changes on 9 yet. But I will echo chapter 7, what Kurt said, really major changes. People probably don't fully appreciate what's going on here. And we may not even, but I mean, there is, you, Mr. Chairman, I have served on a planning commission before dealing with subdivisions. And on this planning, or on the MPC, and it was always frustrating to us. Now we have some significant detail that we're going to receive when we receive a plan. And I think it's a lot more orderly also in terms of the way it's laid out, in terms of sketch plans and preliminary plats and final plats. We actually know what everybody's doing, and this planning commission will have a lot more authority on subdivisions, as we will other things in chapter 9, which we'll talk about in a minute. So I look forward to these changes and hope that the city council will follow our recommendations.
Thank you. I'll echo that. Any other comments on 7? I guess I should do, is there anybody online?
No, sir.
Okay. So I will call the question on chapter 7 to say that we're complete and are turning over the final documents to city council.
I'll make a motion that we have approved the final draft of chapter 7 that is before us. After months of arduous work on this, and that of course is based on the authority that's set forth in South Carolina statutes, also as set forth in the comp plan. I move approval of this based on.
I'll second that.
I have
Add one thing to Mr. Chairman, that we include the fact that this chapter 7 is as of January 13th.
good point.
Clarify the draft, good idea.
Clarify the draft.
Yes. And
So the
same-
clean copy dated January 13th.
Yes. Any further comments? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. And that motion is unanimous. We'll move to chapter or section 9. Any comments on section 9?
Only, and I did go over to make sure that all the comments that I brought up in our last work session were included, and they were, with just one exception. If I may go to page 18.
In the clean copy or the?
Clean copy. Only page subsection C there. You see little I, little, double I. If we could just, I think would be better if we just said the planning commission here, because that's all we're referring to, instead of the appropriate design review body / planning commission. Or was there a reason, Kurt, that you left it that way?
Would you mind cite I think we
It
could.
was section 9.8.2,
1.8.2
small
A,
c, small little I, small little double I.
to A, okay, A and then C, and then,
A, and then that's a capital A, and then it goes to a small c.
I don't see a double I.
I don't either. It's not in,
Well,
Not on the
I-
clean copy.
This is the one we got, yeah.
Tonight, yeah. February 4th.
We did get one on February.
so is that the one you're referring to?
Well, we made changes on February 4th.
made the changes on February
It
4th.
should be on there, unless you're looking at.
So the question is whether whether that small c is needed, is that correct?
Excuse me?
I might not, whether that's needed, whether it should be removed, is that?
No.
Okay.
Well, let's make sure we're on the right version, because we had so many versions of this thing earlier today when I was going back over what we talked about on February 4th. I had about 6 copies that were all dated
You've had a lot of copies.
January 13th, and I said, well, they didn't make any of the changes from our February 4 meeting, but actually I did have one final clean copy where you did make all those changes. So let's make sure that the version that we're considering today has all those changes. And if you look at, I know that we'll have the correct version if you go to 9.8.2 A, C. Let me look here with let's see if he's got the right version.
So
Yeah, he does.
Let's go to it.
talking about the version dated February 4th that we got tonight?
Yeah, it says February 4 in the little bottom right corner
Okay.
there. Yeah.
I see what you're talking about.
Now, do you see the little I and little double I?
On page 18.
And if you could go to a clean copy, it'd be easier than that red line copy.
Yeah, I gotta find it. It's like 300 pages, so. Yeah. Guess I went to the wrong section here. Here we go. Chapter 9, but that's still the track change. For whatever reason on the screen, we have the,
So, Bill, as I understand it, are you just saying that in the C, you're suggesting that we should take out the words appropriate design review body in the first line?
Yeah, and if he can get his right version there, then.
Just passed it, Kurt, I believe.
I went too far.
Well, you can have my version if you want it, Kurt.
You're almost there. There you go.
Yeah, 10.
Yeah, but I got the. Oop.
Still the red line, but. That's fine.
There you go.
Now go to the next page.
Completely.
That isn't even it, because that says January 13th.
This might have been the old one, yeah. I'm
Yeah, that's
sorry,
the
it just wasn't
January
up on the
13th
screen,
version.
so I kind of have to use it.
If everybody has the version that says on the bottom corner there, 214. Yeah, in this bottom corner where right there.
2-4?
2-4.
2-4, yeah, 2-4.
Right.
Okay.
I got it.
So all I'm saying is right there, where it says applicability and review, it says the appropriate design review body / planning commission. In the historic section, it said the appropriate design review body / historic
'Cause it
review
was-
body.
it was
and we-
needed.
And we got rid of the appropriate review body. We just need to get rid of it in these 2 places here, because we're only referring to the planning commission. That's all.
Okay, so I think,
It doesn't change it substantively, it just makes it clear so somebody doesn't think that we're talking about.
okay, well, let's make that reference as 9.8.2 A5C.
Yep.
That's the
8.2.
Oh, it's 8.5, well, yeah, that's, right.
5C.
That's right.
Roman numeral
9.8.2,
one,
A, 5C.
Yes.
That's it. Yep, yep,
Okay. Well, then I think if you
that's it.
make a, uh, recommendation, or you would just add that to the recommendation to make that change.
Okay.
We'll do that before it goes to city council, unless there's anything other needs to be changed. As you can see, it's 345 pages that you've been working on, so it's.
And I would,
So-
my other comment on this would be, is I don't know, they're probably gonna lose their minds if you send all these versions to them. I don't know. what
Yeah,
they-
we'll just pick the final two. We'll just have the final two versions. Once we make that little change, we'll have a track change and of tonight and a final, and that'll be it.
And
There
the
won't
one
be
with
any
the
other
comments, I
versions. I know you've collected a lot of versions.
don't know that the comments version really adds that much. You know, the red line, I guess, to some people, it really helps. To me, it just makes it hard to follow. I keep going back to my clean copies on every one of these things. But my only other that's the only change I had. Other comment is just like the other one. But this chapter 9 work that this commission did, I think was really especially significant.
Yep.
And the authority that we're gonna have is much clearer now, and things that were just plain inaccurate before are gone. And I think going forward, sitting in the capacity, not just of reviewing subdivisions, but now reviewing site plans and having the ability to ask for a site plan in the context of a rezoning. And even if the city council accepts our recommendation that we officially hold a public hearing set henceforth, and if they want to do it, they can do it all over again. But if they don't want to in the future, they can rely on our record. So it's going to be real important that the record that we send is now, the recommendation we send includes a really good record to them, because they may decide not to hold a public hearing and just rely on what we said. Not just our decision, but the basis of our decision. And I think that'll encourage people to take our work more seriously. And if they do have something to say, bring it here, because this is really the important place, because there's no guarantee, assuming the city council accepts our recommendation like this, there'll be no guarantee that the city council will have another public hearing. So bring it to us and let us air those comments.
Well, and I think even as important or more importantly, you're taking it to the body that has the most expertise in those areas.
And you develop that with, you know, the longer you serve on it, the more you get a feel for these things, and then there becomes sort of a precedent in the way we look at these things.
So I completely agree that it's a great idea to just present the clean copies for purposes of further review for both 9 and 7. However, I do think that there are, obviously, there are some really big changes that we're recommending here. And in lieu of sending the draft with all the cross-throughs and all that, which is extremely confusing document to work with, I might suggest that you provide both the city attorney and council with some kind of an executive summary that would indicate the departures we are recommending. There's AI tools that can help generate something like that. There are other ways to do it as well, the old-fashioned ways, but I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll have to do a report just for them. So, yeah, I didn't do that for you since you've been doing it for the last 7 months. So it seemed like everybody was like on point with even the most minor details. So.
Okay, so without further comment from the board, I'll just ask if there's any public comment. Seeing none, I will go back to the board and ask for a motion.
I'd
I'll
be
move
happy make a
to,
motion.
go ahead.
I'd be happy to make a motion again. It's similar to the last one, that we approve these chapter 9 changes based on arduous work that has been done over these months by the planning commission, further based on the authority that we are given by the the South Carolina legislature and by our comprehensive planning, so by our comprehensive plan.
And go ahead and put a date on it.
Yeah, and that would be the version, I guess, dated. Yeah, it would be, there is a date on that version. right?
February 4th.
Before 25 with the changes recommended today.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So we have moved section 7 and 9 to city council now. And it would be really helpful, Kurt, if we could have that synopsis ready for the end of the month meeting, for the strategic planning meeting.
Sure, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have a related motion about something that we talked about at our work session, and it's an issue that is not addressed in the current code and not addressed in chapter 7 and 9. And that is the issue of annexation. We do not have any code guidance, although there is state statutory guidance for annexation. But I would like to make a motion that somebody write a section of proposed code regarding annexation standards for the city. It's very important, if you look at the strategic plan, that, you know, the annexation is an issue that is part of the strategic plan, and there's specific things that the city, initiatives that the city is undertaking about that, but we as the planning commission do have to act on those petitions, and I think we need to address it somehow in the code, particularly in situations where, as they usually come, they come along with a zoning request. And, you know, so there's a relationship between the two of them. And we've had issues in the past where people want to get annexed. They want a certain zoning, but they haven't really told us what they want to do with the annexed property if the petitions are granted. So I do think that, I don't want to see that go by the wayside. That doesn't detract with the work we've done on 7 and 9 at all. I think everybody's worked very hard and we've got a great product, but that is a missing element that I don't want to see get lost.
I agree.
Where would that, what section would that would go into 9?
Logically, to me, it could be tacked on the end of section 9. It doesn't have to be right now. I mean, I don't want to hold anything up, but I would like staff to present us with something, and I'd like us to be able to act on it before we conclude our review of the code.
Further discussion, comment?
Good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched council sort of struggle with a rezoning not too long ago. They probably would benefit from a little bit better, more direct guidance as well. So, yes.
We'll put something together. Try to look at some other communities and bring it back to one of your work sessions, you know,
Do
maybe.
we have to do a motion on this, or?
I think you gave clear direction, so.
I think we're good. The last item on our agenda is the planning commission input for the strategic plan. And I don't know if you've all gone through the strategic plan document that has been given to us with initiatives and transparency. But I would also ask if everybody's got a copy of the comprehensive plan, which goes through the same thing, but it was put together by the planning commission as opposed to city council. And does anybody not have this particular document?
I
think I have it.
I've got it.
I have it.
Um, what we did when we put this together is in the back. And maybe some of what was given to us for initiatives and transparency came out of these documents, but every item that's in the comp plan has a reference item, for the initiative along with additional information. And I would like to see if we couldn't get our comprehensive plan, to be a little more in agreement with the, city's, strategic plan, because the strategic plan winds up being, dollars and cents. And the, comprehensive plan, there's elements of that that I think have not been incorporated yet into this, strategic initiative that ought to be, in my opinion.
So Kurt, I know that on the agenda for the strategic plan rescheduled session, there's going to be a discussion on the first day explaining the strategic planning process as it has been used and will be used for the city of Beaufort. And some of these questions might get addressed there, but if you know, maybe you could clarify for us, with my experience with strategic planning, they usually are 3 to 5 year operations, and 2025 is the last year in the cycle, as I understand, for the current strategic plan. And I know that the city does maintain some transparency initiatives that can be found on the website that gives you a little information about the progress on the various strategic plan key performance indicators. However, I'm a little unclear, is this going to be a session where we're going to be talking about how we're doing on the current strategic plan? Or is this a session designed to create the next strategic plan for the coming years? I don't know if you know that today, but if you do.
I don't know that I have that. I don't know that I know that for this current strategic plan cycle. I will say that there is a 2-hour session on the development code and our current progress. So that's important, I think, for all of you to think about, where I think they want an update, where you're at, and kind of giving the planning commission a little bit of, time to kind of explain what you've done and success, failures, that kind of thing, and what you want to move towards the future. So I think Mr. Tomey's comments, that could be incorporated in that session. I do know that when we're done, I'm sound like a politician because I'm answering another question here that you didn't ask, but I do know when the code changes are done, it's likely we'll start to go into updating the comprehensive plan. So that might be next year, but we'll probably start the planning of that, and next year I think we'll start on an update of that comprehensive plan. So that'll be a big lift, I think. So anyway, just throwing that out.
I don't know if you have any thoughts about how to address the comprehensive plan or not. I think it'd be great to get some input from staff about what your thoughts are about how we would address this so that we don't wind up spending years trying to deal with the comprehensive plan. And I'm hoping that we can use portions of what we already have in front of us.
Yeah, I think probably we have the strategic and, talk to council and see what the, and what kind of the will is, what they're looking for with the new comprehensive plan. Is it going to be a major rewrite, or is it just going to be a kind of a minor rewrite? I know in some states it has to be done every 5 years. I don't think that's, but, typically what seems to be done in a lot of places is the 5-year update is kind of more of a minor update, just kind of refreshing numbers and a land use map, and then the 10-year is usually the major update where, you know, the whole plan is, you know, basically completely revised, or a whole new modality is presented for that plan. So I know we just had a plan in 2021, so maybe moving forward, you know, with that, you know, kind of get the will of everybody, and we'll, I think, communicate, right, and have some meetings and figure out what you all want to do in the future. So, you know, because it'll require probably funding and a lot of time, so it's a big undertaking, so.
It's the, you know, we had the master plan booklet as well. Is that kind of, and it's like very outdated. Is that kind of
Yeah, I
just
think
like,
that has to be discussed too at the meeting, because the civic master plan was approved in 2014, and, you know, when you get over 10 years, things are extremely outdated. And, you know, that was an extremely visionary plan that, you know, I think it probably needs to be revisited, or how do we incorporate this in the future? How do we move past it? I don't know. Those are big questions, but that plan is getting very dated, you know, right? And it's, I think we have to start talking about that.
but the comprehensive plan is not replacing that. It's just kind of like two documents that both need to be updated.
You know, that's another good question, because, you know, most places don't have two separate plans per se.
Yeah.
Typically that would be like an addendum to the comprehensive plan, the civic master plan, and I'm not sure how that was all done. I mean, it's a beautiful document, I think it's, you know, right? But typically that, you know, it's almost kind of like a, you know, like a small area study was done for the whole city, is basically like kind of, or like an area study was done for the, and sorry, I'm talking bureaucratic planning ease, but, you know, you get into the specifics of each area and it takes a lot of time, but that was done for the whole city. And so, yeah, these are big questions, because the civic master plan is a very big undertaking if they want to do something like that again. So that was something we need to talk about at that strategic plan session. Whoever's going to attend, you know, what is the intention? I don't think that we're ready to do a full, or I don't know the value of doing a full civic master plan again for the entire city in that level of detail. I don't know that that is effective use of time and resources and money for the city, but again, that's just the staff level opinion, so. Maybe, to me, it's maybe should be focused on certain areas and not the whole city.
So as I look at them, and just looking at, you know, some of the language used in these various documents, to me, and you, I don't know if you agree with this or not, correct me if I'm wrong, you're the planner. But the civic master plan seems to be the overarching document to express the vision and goals of the city. It gets a little more granular when you get to the comprehensive plan, and that's very data-driven in the comprehensive plan. And then it gets even more granular at the strategic planning phase, which are shorter periods of time covered with very much more specific goals to be addressed, and basically reporting back from city staff and other stakeholders as to what's going on
Yeah.
during these shorter periods of
Yeah, so I would invert the first two, because the civic master plan, the way it was done is that's why I was saying it's more like a small area study, or like an area study, because it's very specific. Whereas the comprehensive plan is a statutory document. It's very general, and it does have generally an implementation and kind of like a goals and objectives section. That's a major portion of it. And so that's kind of the big portion, I think, of the comprehensive plan is the future land use map, goals and objectives, and kind of like, how are you going to implement this in the future? Those are the big things, but, you know, in our case, the civic master plan, you know, was basically drawing out where they want to see, you know, buildings and streets and streetscapes, and, you know, it was very visionary, I think, at the time, very, very granular, so.
So, and you're right about the way that it works. The statute doesn't even contemplate a civic master plan, but it doesn't mean that you can't do one, because you could have all sorts of small area studies that are sort of addendums or components of a comprehensive plan. But because the comprehensive plan, you know, starts here,
I hope that if, the next time we get around to doing the comp plan, you know, unlike the way we went about with the code changes, for some reason, the city council decided they wanted to spend all this time in sessions talking about the code before it even came here. And it really should have been here and then went there. But with the comp plan, I think it's even more elementary that it start here, the whole discussion go on here, and then we send it there, and whatever the elected officials decide to do with it, from there, it's their business. But we'd probably save everybody a lot of time and effort if we gonna make some changes. We begin those discussions whenever we begin them, this year, next year, at the planning commission level here. And the whole hearings, obviously, we have to, and all that sort of thing.
So it sounds like, you know, since this is going to be in 2 week, well, yeah, what is today, the 10th? Yeah, 2 weeks from today, that's when it starts. So, you know, it sounds like you're kind of getting some ideas of what you wanted to talk about the city council too. So I think Bill has stated, you know, he has some concern that planning commission is kind of the starting the process for the comprehensive plan. You know, I think Mike is talking about, you know, how do we keep these implementation and strategic plan strategies moving forward into the new plan? And Cam, I think you've got a lot of good questions about, you know, what's about the civic master plan, and Benji, you know, what are we doing with that? So I think, is there more? Because I think these are things we have this time at the strategic plan session. What other things do you think are really important for talking about the future of both, you know, really this planning commission, the code edit sessions, comprehensive planning, strategic planning? I think those are 4 good things that we can put on the screen for them, you know, that you have some.
I think they're definitely, I think we need to, I'm sorry, be clear, too, that the comprehensive plan is the responsibility of the planning commission. It's statutory that way. And so it's incumbent upon us to initiate and start moving forward with that, with input, I think, from the city. The other elements are going to take some money and planning. I don't think that anybody here is going to want to do a master plan for the city. But yet we're kind of hamstringed by that master plan that was done back in 2014, because things refer back to it, and developers have to refer back to it. So if we're going to keep that implemented, we need to be, I think, a little more particular about what should or should not be part of that, and whether or not we want to redo another one. I think the city is important enough in my mind to do one, but whether the will of the city to do one or not would be my question.
Does that sound like a good topic? Everybody, what do you all think about that? Because you're all here, and then they're gonna have the meeting, so it's probably the time to ask, right? Do you want to do another? Do you think it should be updated? Do you think that there has to be the hard discussion of just moving past it, or should it start being maybe updated?
I think it should be updated, personally. I think it's very important.
Revised, I suppose, would be the better way.
Do you know how frequently it was updated before the 2014 version?
There wasn't one.
That was the first one?
That
Okay.
may have been the first one, yeah.
Okay, so,
It's I don't think there's probably maybe a handful of communities in the country that have something like that. I'd guess there's probably less than 10. And I'm not, Bill's got a lot of experience on this. That is a very unique document, especially for a city this size. It is almost unheard of, so.
It is very visionary.
Yeah.
But I would agree with you that I don't know that we have to do one for the whole city, but I think there are certain areas of the city that it'd be really important for us to do some master planning in those areas, like the Northwest Quadrant.
yeah, I don't know if we have the opportunity at the strategic planning session. I mean, there's 3 days. You know, maybe that would be a time, you know, all stakeholders, you know, will either be there or have the opportunity to be there. to maybe discuss that, do we want to do, I mean, obviously, the point of this session is the strategic plan, but since the documents relate to each other, maybe we could find out what council thinks, about that.
Yeah, it'd probably be important to know how much it'll cost, because they'll probably need an outside consultant. to
Yeah, I mean, the
to run.
strategic, I understand the civic master plan costs like almost like $1.5 million or $2 million in 2013 and 14. So you can only imagine how much it would cost now. So, but if I'm hearing the or what everybody's saying, I think you want to talk about it. And it sounds like some people think instead of redoing the whole thing, maybe you should look at specific sub areas and update those sub areas. So that should be the focus of the new, maybe a subsection of the comprehensive plan, essentially, just a revision of those areas. Is that what I'm hearing? And that could be maybe presented as a alternative?
I think, in my opinion, that's probably true, although the civic master plan could still be used as a guide. Well, any further discussion, or I'll take a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Just, before we do that, Mike, as our new chair, are you, as I understand it, the planning commission has a seat at the table for the entire situation, so
That's right.
all 3 days. Mike, are you planning to attend all 3 of those, or would you like assistance from us for some coverage?
I'm planning on being there the whole time. I have one conflict for 2 hours on one morning. Other than that, I plan on being there for the 3 days. But I would really like to have participation from this board. And I'm hoping that the city council will allow us to have more interactive discussions in some of these areas with other people.
Is there an agenda for the 3 days?
Yes,
Yes, there's an agenda.
Is it out?
Yeah,
Is it
Chris,
available?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
on the website.
it's online.
Well, I'm planning to attend as much of it as I can. And if you need assistance with whatever if you end up needing assistance for your 2-hour conflict, feel free to call on me, or I'm sure others would be willing to do
Okay.
that too. But
I appreciate
I
it.
think it's a really important opportunity for us to interact with, with council and other boards on really important topics. So
Yes. I
July 24th to the 26th at the Black Chamber of Commerce, and it starts pretty much at 8:30 every day. You can get there at 8, it'll be open at 8, but 8:30 every day till 5.
Monday through.
And
I was there
food is
last month.
provided.
I was there last month with nobody there.
You didn't-
Yeah, I got canceled, everyone, because of the snow, and your meeting got canceled too, so.
All right, so I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
We're recording it.